Greetings. How's everyone out there? Well, I'm doing good. And I just wanted to share some things with you that's been on my heart and mind that I feel would be a blessing to those out there. A few words from the Lord. So I will go ahead and get right into it and just read from the Word, starting from the King James Version. We'll start with 2 Kings chapter 4, and I will read it word for word, and then get to what I want to say. Chapter 4. Now there cried a certain woman of the wives of the sons of the prophets unto Elijah, saying, Thy servant my husband is dead, and thou knowest that thy servant did fear the Lord. And the creditor is come to take unto him my two sons to be bondmen. And Elijah said unto her, What shall I do for thee? Tell me, what hast thou in the house? And she said, Thine handmaiden hath not anything in the house, save for a pot of oil. Then he said, Go, borrow the vessels abroad of all thy neighbors, even empty vessels. Borrow not a few. And when thou art come in, thou shalt shut the door upon thee and upon thy sons, and shalt pour out into all those vessels, and thou shalt set aside that which is full. So she went from him, and shut the door upon her, and upon her sons, who brought the vessels to her, and she poured out. And it came to pass, when the vessels were full, that she said unto her son, Bring me yet a vessel. And he said unto her, There is not a vessel more. And the oil stayed. Then she came and told the man of God. And he said, Go sell the oil, and pay thy debt, and live thou and thy children of the rest. Okay, so that's just a particular passage that spoke to me, and I've heard this in someone's message many years ago about the Lord provides. Okay, and I also want to look at another one for just a moment here. I want to go to Matthew chapter 14 and starting at verse 14. And this is talking about with Jesus and his disciples, and they're talking to the multitudes, and people are coming out to see him. And I'm going to start with 14 and read from there. And Jesus went forth and saw a great multitude, and was moved with compassion toward them, and he healed their sick. And when it was evening, the disciples came to him, saying, This is a desert place, and the time is now past. Send the multitude away, that they may go into the villages and buy themselves victuals. But Jesus said unto them, They need not depart, give ye them to eat. And they said unto him, We have here but 5 loaves and 2 fishes. He said, Bring them hither to me. And he commanded the multitude to sit down on the grass, and took the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes, and looked up to heaven. He blessed and brake, and gave the loaves to his disciples, and disciples to the multitude. And they did all eat, and were filled. And they took up of fragments that remained 12 baskets full. And they that had eaten were about 5,000 men, besides women and children. And also, this same miracle is repeated in Matthew chapter 15, starting with verse 32. And Jesus called his disciples unto him, and said, I have compassion on the multitude, because they continue with me now 3 days, and have nothing to eat. And I will not send them away fasting, lest they faint in the way. And his disciples said unto him, Whence should we have so much bread in the wilderness, as to fill so great a multitude? And Jesus saith unto them, How many loaves have ye? And they said, 7, and a few little fishes. And he commanded the multitude to sit down on the ground. And he took the 7 loaves and the fishes, and gave thanks, and brake them, and gave to his disciples, and the disciples to the multitude. And they did all eat, and were filled. And they took up of the broken meat that was left 7 baskets full. And they that did eat were 4,000 men, besides women and children. Okay. And one more verse I want to look at with you. Romans chapter 8, verse 32. Okay. You will bear with me a moment. Get to my verse here. Okay. And starting with verses, actually, I'm going back up to verse 31. What should we say to these things? If God be for us, who can be against us? He that spared not his own son, but delivered him up for us all, how shall he not with excuse me, let me say that again, make sure I get it right. He that spared not his own son, but delivered him up for us all, how shall he not with him also freely give us all things? Okay, now, so what I want to get into, now, don't get this, don't misunderstand this. This is not a prosperity message or gospel. The whole point that I want to touch on is how the Lord provides, how when we are in our need, the Lord sees us in our situation, and however the means he chooses to, provides an answer or deliverance or fulfillment of that need. And a lot of times it calls for us to have obedience to him, and he will work out the miracle in his timing, in his way. You know, a lot of time, because of our mindset, you know, the Israelites, they look for Messiah over their history. But when Jesus actually came, you know, you can read for yourself how they constantly argued, and every time the Lord said something, they just disagreed, and they say, who is the Messiah? Who are you, and who is your father? And just from start to finish, just constantly doubting the Lord. So the Lord oftentimes will come in a way that we don't expect, and it will go against our mindset. And we let our fears and expectations get in the way of how we could be blessed. So in the case of going back to the widow that needed help from Elijah, she had a need there. She had a debt. The creditors were going to come get her sons and sell them into slavery to pay off the debt. And so if you remember, he asked, okay, what do you have? Okay. So, in that case, hey, she had the oil. She trusted him with what she had. She had just a little bit of oil. So as you can see, he took that little bit and multiplied it and made a way for her. Okay. In the case with Lord talking to the multitude with the fish, he asked the disciples, okay, the people need to be fed. Okay. What do we have? Okay. We had fish and bread. So the Lord said, okay, bring that to me. The Lord blessed it. He had the disciples, put the people in groups, had the disciples to distribute the food. Okay. And there are many other examples that we could give throughout the word of the Lord, asking people when they come to him, having them to do something, to activate their faith. If they're coming to him to fulfill a need, and he will oftentimes ask you to be obedient, to see your faith, to see if you're going to be obedient. So there are cases where there's some people who didn't listen, weren't obedient, and those who were. And sometimes what you have to do is, despite your fear, just, if you know the Lord, trust his spirit as it's speaking through you. Okay, don't let fear get in the way. The enemy, the devil, is going to use fear. He's going to cause you to doubt the Lord. Starting in the Garden of Eden, that's one of Satan's tactics. He asked Eve, had the Lord really said? He got her to question, what did the Lord say about the fruit in the garden? And she doubted the Lord, and she ended up eating the fruit. And Adam, he listened. He chose to be disobedient. He knew even before Eve, so he chose to be disobedient.